Hello and welcome back to Turn Up the Volume, the podcast where we dig deep into the stories, statistics and strategies that are helping to create a more inclusive and equitable audio industry. I'm Naya Wanya, your host and audio equity champion from the Yorkshire Sound Women Network. And today, we're focusing on an area that's absolutely crucial for long-term change. And it's strand number 6 on the Volume Up standard. Recruitment. Recruitment is the gateway to opportunity. It's how we bring new voices, talents and perspectives into our industry. But if we're not careful, it can also be a gatekeeper, reinforcing the same old biases and barriers. In today's episode, we're exploring the 6th strand of our Volume Up framework, ensuring that recruitment processes are open, transparent and truly inclusive. We'll hear from 4 incredible voices on why this matters and how we can all do better. Let's start with Xylo, who started music production for women and talked about why representation is so important in our industry.
Why do you think representation is important? You know, why do you think it is important to be able to sort of see others who come from similar life experiences than you taking up space?
Well, if we're talking about art in this scenario or art or music, you want that to represent the population. And of course, we make up half the population. So why shouldn't we have the artistic output from as many women as there are, you know, in the general population, and also all of the other gender minorities and all of that as well, so that we hear the inspiration that's coming out of these different minority groups as well. And yeah, I mean, I say minority even though we're not a minority in general society. So I think that's better for everyone. Doesn't everyone want to hear more of a variety in the music and the art that they're seeing? So I know I do.
So what would you say to those in positions of influence within the audio industry? So like, it could be people that you've worked with, it could be people that you'd want to work with, but what would you sort of say to them to engage them in conversations around gender equity?
Yeah, I think speaking to the women that they're working with a really open mind of how can we make this better for you?
If you don't have people that you can actually ask and say, hey, how are we all doing? If you actually look around the room and there's no representation, that should be a red flag straight away. And then if you are able to then, like speak to people and just say, what are some areas that I'm missing? And I think when you think about equity and equality, for me, it's that. It's going, hey, are you asking everybody for their opinion? Are you checking in on how everybody's doing? And are you able to hear if they say, this actually isn't great? And I think that comes back to that kind of open heart thing of ask without ego, you know, and be able to say, all right, let's carry on this conversation. It doesn't have to just be one. And I think the more that we have these conversations, again, the more it becomes like a muscle, and we're able to then have more complex conversations and figure out what is best for everybody. But we have to have the conversations first, right?
Representation doesn't just happen by accident. It requires intentionality. Laura from Saffron Records shared some thoughts on this, particularly around the need for recruiters to regularly question themselves and their processes.
I think it's a lot about listening and learning. Like, those are the kind of the 2 things that you want to be able to do, because I think we've got a real wanting to, well, some people have a real wanting to want to know what's best. They want to know and to be able to show that they know what they know. Ego. And actually, I think sometimes it's leaving space for others. So if there's a conversation that you're able to hear, okay, that person has something to bring to the table. Their voice can be heard. This might be a different way. This may be a different way to what I know, but actually I'm willing to be able to learn from somebody else. On a sort of logistical level, it's really thinking about how you're recruiting, because I think there's so many companies that have been through friends of friends or knowing those networks and things like that. And that means that you're only exposed to a certain demographic of people, because if your friends don't have people from diverse backgrounds, how are you going to access those people from diverse backgrounds? And then what happens from there is, say if there is somebody from, the global majority that wants to come into that space, and they're surrounded by people that are from a very different background, very different cultural space to them, they may not feel that sense of belonging. So I think what it's really about is it's about creating a space where people are not just able to enter it, and you're not able to just do that tick of the box, we've got that person that's working in that space, but actually how do we allow and encourage them to thrive in that space? What are the amendments that we need to make culturally to our space to make that work for them? Just really, I think, questioning yourself regularly, not just in Black History Month, not just in, Pride Month, but actually regularly questioning yourself, questioning, what that staffing team looks like. Who are your audience members? Like, how do you reach out to them? What do you think that they may want to experience? What do you think they may want to see? Like, it's about, some of those changes.
Yeah, because I think with the recruitment thing, especially as well, it's that understanding, like you said, is that there's bringing people in, but then will they stay? So it's not just recruitment, it's retainment. And I think a lot of the time a drive goes to, like you say, bring people in, but have you actually not only adapted the space, but have you adapted your way of thinking about how a space should be run? And have you thought about how, being challenged with another way of doing things, if you're able to actually manage that within yourself, or see that as, are you able to see that as cultural difference, or are you going to see that as an affront to your position?
Yeah.
Laura's reminded to question our recruitment processes. It's really important when we consider the biases that can creep in, often without us even realising it. That's why it's called unconscious. Isabel from Girls Twiddling Knobs touched on this also.
Growing up at school, I still have dyslexia, but I had dyslexia in such a way that it was a problem, So in school, I was really good at just picking things up and making things happen with them, but really struggled to follow instructions and do it the right way, and often was sort of told that the way that my brain worked was a problem, even though some of the ways that my brain worked was really excellent and really imaginative, and actually got celebrated quite a lot, being wheeled out to do like music performances and things at school. But it was never the right stuff that actually mattered in terms of getting good grades and going up that well-trodden ladder. So I think from an early age, I kind of really understood I love learning and I love making and I love creating, but for some reason, just the way that my brain has been put together, it does not fit in to a model that's necessarily going to kind of give me immediate success or immediate acceptance or understanding, And sometimes it does, but it always feels a bit kind of on the outskirts. So I'm sure a lot of artists can relate to that, and a lot of neurodivergent people can relate to that. So I think that I've always kind of really loved learning and making and the process of that, more than necessarily kind of having faith or putting much kind of importance in the payback,
Isabel's point about shifting the focus from individual confidence to systemic change is important to highlight. According to a musicians' union survey, there's a persistent bias where employers doubt female musicians' abilities, particularly their technical knowledge. This bias is a major barrier to fair recruitment and retention in our industry. The Misogyny in Music report found that in 2022, only 187 women and non-binary people were credited as either producers or engineers on the top 50 streamed track across 14 genres, compared to 3,781 men. 187 women and non-binary people compared to 3,781 men. The disparity is staggering, and it reflects the deep-seated issues in how talent is recognised and promoted. Nali highlighted how being in an all-female space created a different way of working, one where they felt comfortable and supported in ways that are often missing in mixed-gender environments.
Recently, I've kind of, been doing these songwriting camps, and one of them was like an all-female one, which was, it was just such a vibe. Like, I had such a great time, and it was just a really, nice environment to be in, and everyone was, really supportive and encouraging, and we made some really amazing music as well.
And what do you think it was about having kind of an all-female environment that felt a bit different, if it did feel different?
I don't know, I think it just feels a bit safer in a way, emotionally safer, you feel, I don't know, able to express yourself a bit better and have people understand you more, I guess.
The Be the Change report from 2023 reveals that gender discrimination in the music industry is often compounded by other forms of discrimination. For instance, women from a racial minority are 114% more likely than average to feel that their hiring decision was based at least in part on their racial, ethnic, or tribal background or country of origin. This kind of tokenism complicates the experience of women and gender-expansive individuals in the industry, making fair and equitable recruitment even more challenging, but also critical. The statistics and stories we've heard today make it clear that our industry still has a long way to go in terms of fair, inclusive recruitment and also retainment. But change is possible, and it starts with intentional, transparent practices. That's why we're inviting you to take a step with our Volume Up framework. Strand number 6 focuses on recruitment. One of the pledges we suggest could be implementing open and transparent recruitment processes that truly reflect the diversity in our industry. Our own unconscious biases when recruiting and advertising jobs. Consider how your job descriptions, outreach, and interview processes might be excluding certain groups. At YSWN, we developed the Volume Up framework specifically to support audio and sound organisations in becoming more gender equitable. We're here to help you implement best practices and make meaningful changes that will benefit everyone in the industry. When you commit to fair and transparent recruitment, you're not just improving your company, you're helping to create a more diverse and vibrant industry for all of us. So take a pledge and let's build an industry where everyone has a fair shot at success. You can find more resources on inclusive recruitment practices from the Musicians Union and the Misogyny in Music reports. You can also check out our Volume Up page on YorkshireSoundWomen.com, where you'll also find the Wired Toolkit, which is a free download. In episode 7, we'll be looking at marketing and communications. Until then, keep pushing for a future where everyone's talent is recognised and rewarded. It's time to turn up the volume today. Thank you to all our incredible guests, Laura from Saffron Records, Silo from Music Production for Women, Isabel from Girls Twiddling Knobs, and Nali. Make sure to go and give them a follow on all their social medias and support the great work they do to continue pushing for gender equity. Thank you also to Rosa UK, a grant-making charity that funds women's and girls' organisations working to make the UK a fairer, safer place, without whom we wouldn't have been able to create this podcast. I'm Nayawanya, your podcast host, scripter and director, and audio equity champion at YSWN. Thank you to our editor, Joe Kennedy, and Sarah Statham, who has provided the music, both of whom are YSWN associates. To find out more about what we do, head to our website, www.YorkshireSoundWomen.com. See you next time.